Welcome back for another episode of The Voice of Generation Climate, TVOGC. Today we have with us Aastha Bharadwaj, who's the founder of ClimateHires, a climate recruitment company, India's first climate recruitment company. What a pleasure to have you with us today, Aastha. So today's subject is going to be about how we hire in the space of climate and sustainability. It's a subject we haven't really gone into in depth. We've touched upon it through the lens of different founders, but today we're going to go completely in depth, talking about who are the people looking for climate jobs, who are the people recruiting for people looking for climate jobs, and how's that entire sector shaping up as well. So, Asta, how would you describe ClimateHires, and what's the origination story there?
Yeah. So ClimateHires basically, aims to be that bridge between people who are looking to work in, in climate specific jobs, right? As well as there are so many organizations now coming up in this space. So how to be that bridge between both the companies and the talent, and enable more and more people to work in this sector, which is so crucial, and tackling with one of the biggest challenges that we face today. Right. So that's our vision. But how we started into it is we started off in 2023. And so just to take you through my background and what led to this, I spent almost 8 years in talent acquisition, working with multiple organizations, primarily startups, right? And I guess that's why we work a lot with climate tech startups right now, including some, impact organizations and corporates as well. So my journey of scaling companies from 0 to 1 to 100, and I think I found that always really exciting to be working with founders, to be working with leadership teams and helping them, build and scale their organizations. Right. So I did that for 8 years, but there was always an itch to sort of do more and do something more meaningful. And there was this underlying passion throughout, I would say, since I was a kid to work in this space. At that time, I would say I want to work in the environmental space and, and do something for a better world, right? But I had no idea what these jobs would look like. In fact, when I thought I would want to work in climate, I somehow imagined that I'm going to be planting trees and cleaning lakes and so on and so forth, right? Like that's how a lot of people imagine climate jobs to be, along those lines. Right. But I think what really led to this was in 2023, I was sort of saturated and I really wanted to make that serious transition to working in this space. Started off with Terra. I think you went through that course as well, right? The fellowship. I think that really helped to just know what everybody's talking about. How big is the problem that we are facing? What is happening across the world? Right. And I think once you know the problem, it's very hard not to do something about it. So I was trying to find my own journey, and even though I never thought that I'll be doing recruiting in climate, because my definition was completely something else. But when I met more and more people, I was meeting founders who were like, talent is such a big problem, right? Like talent is always the top three problem when founders and companies are talking about what's keeping them, not helping them scale, right? So I was like, okay, this is what I have done for so many years, and I would love to solve that problem for this particular space. And it's so new, and there's so much happening, and there are so many passionate people out there. So yeah, pretty much there to help that transition happen for people. Yeah.
So you and I are both the same vintage. I think we're the same graduating year from school, and we are in the bucket of being called millennials, right?
True,
So
yeah.
we've also had first careers. Like our environmental, I think love would have come first from being taught EVS or EVE in school, right? And then thinking, okay, climate work would be doing environment work, planting trees and restoring lakes. But it wasn't really a career.
Yeah.
To be very honest, like through the 2010s to 2020, it wasn't really a career first choice for anyone, including for you and me, right?
Yeah.
We had other careers, like you in the talent recruitment space with Gojek,
Yeah.
right? And I had an alternate career in the aerospace industry, and then we converged
Wow.
into the
Yeah.
climate space in
Exactly.
this decade, right? In the 2020s. So
Yeah.
when did that inflection point come where you saw it as a clear opportunity?
Yeah.
Where like we had first careers as other things, but people now graduating have first careers as climate.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the most fascinating part about being here at this time in the whole industry, right? Like And I felt in 2023 itself, it also felt early on. In fact, people still tell me, like, do you have enough organizations to work with? I feel like it's just evolving and, just starting off. But it came as a surprise to me, honestly. In 2023, when I started, I already had a list of like over 500 organizations that were working in this space, right? And right now, the number stands to at least 3,000 climate tech startups only, right? This is all outside happening, the corporate and manufacturing jobs, which are also employing green skills, right? So I feel like in the last 3 to 4 years, things have really picked up. Like 2021 still shows as the peak of climate tech investments across the world, right? It was some like $50 billion. I mean, there has been a lot of ups and downs after that, and but that still shows how much there is to grow, and the prospect, like you see it by 2030, the amount of green jobs we are going to have and the investment that's going to increase, it's massive in numbers. So I feel like it's a privilege to be here at the right time. And this decade, as people say, it's going to be a defining decade for how much progress we're going to make on climate action. Right? I really like this quote, which is very applicable here. Is I think by Barack Obama, which says like we are the first generation to see the impact of climate change and the last generation to do anything about it. And I don't think it could have, it really reflects the times that we are in. And we are in some ways we both are sort of enabling such careers. So yeah, it's
Yes,
a privilege to
yes,
be
absolutely.
part of that.
And now we're halfway through the decade already, right? This was supposed to be the decade for climate action. We're already in 2025, halfway through. So
Yeah.
how have you seen it develop? Like what kind of, on one side,
Yeah.
jobs are people looking for? And two, on the other side, what kind of jobs are available for people who are looking for them? What's the
Yeah.
demand like? What's the supply like? And how have you seen that grow?
Right. I think that's been my biggest learning because I always associated, and most people associated climate jobs with, for example, like an ESG expert or a sustainability manager or LCA, one of these technical skills that's required to solve for climate, right? So, what I've realized and my observation after talking to so many thousands of people and interacting with so many people is that there is a need for all kind of skills in climate, right? There's when we talk about climate careers, it's very closely linked to the sectors like renewable, electric mobility, carbon markets, agri-tech, sustainable construction for that matter, right? So these are very closely linked sectors which are creating jobs in not just technical space, but they also need people with like a marketing manager or finance or HR, right? So it's not limited to that, right? Like it all kind of skills are now being absorbed by this space, and which is amazing to see because it just reflects that no matter what skill you have, you can still play your part in these jobs. So yeah, there's a lot now that has now emerged. I mean, till now, renewables and electric mobility were like the main, which are creating millions of jobs basically. But now you see these other emerging sectors in climate, which is the wastewater management or energy efficiency, carbon markets, and so on and so forth. Right. So it's very evolving. Every day we hear of new technologies, and so on. Yeah.
So can you give me an example of the profile of someone who's now starting to look for a climate job? What are they looking for? What would you describe as common traits amongst a person like that?
Yeah.
Because there is a certain type, an archetype that even I have found, who makes
Yeah.
for a great climate industry hire.
Yeah.
And then leading from that also into the types of companies you're working with, and maybe give an example of someone you worked with,
Yeah.
uh, and how you helped them solve for a particular role.
Right. Right. So from the organization perspective or from talent perspective, like people who are looking for
Either
jobs.
one. You can go 1-2 or 2-1, either one,
Right.
either way. Yeah.
Right. I mean, from organization perspective, at least we have supported 20 plus clients and every requirement differs a lot, right? For example, we are supporting a startup which is in the green hydrogen space, right? So they need people who are, R&D experts who are, building these new technologies around green hydrogen, how to make it more efficient, how to make it more cost effective. Right? So these are very technical role, people sitting in the lab, they most likely have a PhD degree, right? So and they have spent like probably 8-10 years of life in lab, constantly building newer technologies and testing it. So that is a very different role versus the same organization will look for a marketing manager, somebody who can talk about the technology that is getting built, because it's so new. There isn't a more like there isn't much awareness around what green hydrogen is, or how can manufacturing companies utilize it, right? So a marketing manager, even though they don't come necessarily from a background of technical background, right, they might have a technical understanding, but it's still a more generic skill which you can be doing in any other organization, right? So that requirement in itself in the same organization differs so much. At the same time, there are people with all kind of skills looking out. Like there are these, for example, in a sustainability manager, like they help multiple organizations build their net zero plans and put the plan in action for the company, help the management visualize what these changes may look like if you completely change your operations and supply chain and so on and so forth, right? They come with certain expertise. But at the same time, there is, a person sitting very comfortable with their job in Google, probably doing some data analyst role, and they're like, you know what, I want to be part of climate tech. I feel like I'm looking for a more meaningful career for myself, and this is something I resonate with. So somebody with that skill is also looking out, right? So it's not all the experts. So we help people find their own space in with these organizations, because there is a need for all these kind of skills, right? So you can see how much it varies from a data analyst to marketing to finance to an LCA, an ESG, right? So I keep saying, like, it's not limited to one kind of jobs. Like, you would have heard of the statement which says every job is a climate job. Even though it is not today, it is going to be, right? So it's spread across multiple verticals, and um, yeah, so it's like ever evolving. I feel. Yeah. What are your? I know you mentioned about the archetype yourself that you have observed. I would love to know what your observations are.
I in fact shared a list with you. I remember a month
I
ago
remember that.
on WhatsApp. I sent you like a long list of traits that we just keep adding and subtracting from. But
Correct.
it's a common a common list of traits that I find in people who end up really outperforming in this space. I mean, when I say this space,
Yeah.
climate is a space. It's not even a sector. It's like it's a
Yeah.
layer on top of everything, right?
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
can apply it on steel, cement, aluminum, on IT companies, on on everything, right? Like everything can have a climate layer. So I look at climate jobs also that way, that it's a theme. It's like the internet moment, and now there's a climate moment.
Yeah.
Um, but within that, the mindset and traits that certain people have, I think longevity is definitely one. Like missionaries, not mercenaries. I think that
Yeah.
was on my list.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't like you don't end up making great money in the initially at least in this. We're
Yeah.
all still building companies that are meant yet to have like sizable outcomes,
Right.
right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's purpose first and then capitalism driven purpose, which will eventually make money and have outcomes. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, it filters out people who are just looking for,
Yeah. It can't be like any other career, right? Like in that
yeah,
sense, talking about the traits, it's definitely, and you're talking about passion here, like somebody who aligns with your mission and vision of what you are building. And that's one of things that we do as part of when you say climate recruiting. I mean, it doesn't sound like very different than a recruiting process, but right. But when you add the climate angle to it, I think that's the differentiator. What you're talking about, that people who are not just looking for jobs, but who are actually driven by the mission or the vision of the company that
yeah.
they want to be working with, right? So that's so important. It can't be considered as like just for salary or just another job hop in that sense, right? It's so much more than
Yeah.
that. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
Purpose driven, right? Like purpose is a huge driver, and most days are not great. Like you wake up not actually feeling good, and you're like, oh, how do I power through this? And it's actually that long-term vision and purpose that keeps you driving forward.
Yeah,
Because any result, whether you're doing an energy intelligence, energy efficiency company or a carbon credit company or water or waste or whatever, like outcomes are actually time delayed. They take a lot of time to gestate and for you to see the impact, right, on society. So waiting through that period really comes with a lot of just grit, resilience, patience. And
yeah,
I think that is a huge differentiator as well. And some people, they can do that really well. Like they're
yeah,
impatient with action, but patient with results.
yeah.
And
And that action bias is what pretty
yes,
much what we are talking about, right? Like I always say, like intent combined with passion is what we need in this sector. Everybody can say they are passionate to solve for it, but the amount of hard work it's requires the perseverance it requires, that it can only be possible when you have the intent to actually do something about that passion, right? And like you said, it's super critical because there's so many blockers in. It's new, so of course everybody's trying to figure out what's the best way to solve for this particular problem of waste or plastic and so on and so forth, right? And the way things have been done for ages, now everybody's trying to, all these founders or organizations are trying to transform it completely. That comes with a lot of behavior change, which is very long term. And people who are absolutely driven, they will be able to stay through the journey with the leadership team of the management. So
Yeah.
absolutely, I think that's like a given, that intent combined with passion, and the learnability aspect. Like there's so much learning to be done here. No matter how senior a talent you are, but you come in this sector and you are completely starting off from scratch. Like nobody's
Yeah.
an expert till now, right? Like so that learnability aspect as one of the traits I really value. And when I'm talking to founders who are looking to hire, they always say like, you know, they can be what they are, but they have to be somebody who can learn fast, or they're curious enough to do more research and figure out their way out, right? So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's why all the old playbooks they don't apply here. Like they always say T profiles, right? Be really good on the broad, but be excellent at something vertical. Like
Yeah,
be really good at something, be the
yeah,
best in a particular field, right? But
yeah,
broad enough, you have to also be capable of learning across
true.
different domains. And that
Yeah,
T profile, I think over here applies, but it's so much more like about the subjective, which is this person like, has this person got integrity? Are they a long-term person? Are they resilient? Like all those things are even more important in this space, right? Which
yeah,
you would
yeah.
discount everywhere else.
Yeah, it's a soft skills that
Yeah,
matters. I mean, because it's there aren't enough people with renewable knowledge or like
yeah,
expertise in climate risk analysis for that. There's some certain things which are becoming very very in demand because there aren't enough people. You want people who are capable of doing these things, and that capability comes with these softer aspects of how driven are you, what's your adaptability scale, how are you doing on learnability and things like that, right? So majority of the our hiring managers, they keep telling us we want, they half the time they're actually explaining the softer skills, not that, oh, I want an expert in Python or like one of these technical skills. So climate is one sector wherein if you are driven, if you are really passionate about solving this problem and you can back it up with some of your skills and your learnability aspects and stuff like that, there is a way to create your own opportunity, create your own role for that matter, right? I see so many people, people meet and they're like, oh, I think you can do some of these things, like you can do a little bit of marketing, you can do a little bit of comms and branding and so on and so forth. So we can create a role for you, right? So there's so many times roles are being created for people who have the right intent. So these softer skills are the most crucial, more than the technical ones, I would say.
yeah. I actually really like that line you just said. Create the role. I think the best roles are created
Yeah,
around a person rather than coming in to fill in a existing role.
true,
Uh,
true, very true.
right?
Very true. That happens all the
Yeah.
time. I mean, we see it happening all the time. Like I sometimes have gone to an event and I've met people and I'm like, you know what? Like you should talk to this person because it seems aligned with what this particular founder is building. And I think you guys should talk. And sometimes out of nowhere there are roles being created for certain kind of people, right? So absolutely. And that's the, I guess, what happens with any nascent sort of sector or industry, whatever you call it, right? Because organizations are small, so you want people who can participate in various functions and at a wider level, not just like, oh, I'm in marketing, so I'm just gonna do marketing, right? Like they also need
Yeah.
to have an eye.
That doesn't work. Just boxing yourself into one role.
Not at all, not at all in these jobs, at least.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay, the tricky question for you, which is what is the ideal size of an organization now in 2025? And from there, if you can talk about what the 0 to 1 journey looks like, team building wise, the 1 to 10 journey, team building wise, and then 10 to 100.
Yeah. I would say ideal size is a difficult one, right? Like it differs so much with organizations, right? Like for example, in climate, there are organizations which are using not just software to solve for, but hardware to solve for as well, right? So if a combination of both, you require much larger team to implement those solutions. If you are building, like for example, a water management platform, you need people on the ground who are working with these factories or plants, and who are helping them implement the software plus hardware. So it requires much larger team versus a team which is purely on the software, for example, a carbon accounting platform. You can do with a small team. There are organizations in, with the size of like 30 to 50 people, or even like 20 to 40 people, right? And that's like an ideal size for somebody like that. So there are a lot of factors which play into when we say, like, whether we want a 20-member team or a 15-member team. I know you are a fan of a 10-member team. You've always said that I'm not ever grow beyond like 10, right?
But
Like,
I just have
okay,
like
so
strong
sorry, my
opinions about it. But as I said, everybody differs on this, right? And
yeah, correct. I think it's organization to organization, and what the goals are at the end of the day. How much are you looking to grow? Some companies can have very ambitious goals of, that we want to work across the world and, solve for at a much larger case. But at the same time, there are exceptional organizations working in a smaller scale, like, let's solve this problem for India first, and, then. So I think there are a lot of variables that play into the factor of what size, right?
yeah,
Um,
I'll tell
and
you why I also asked this.
yeah,
Earlier, there was this notion globally, in India for sure, but also globally, where like your success got equated with how big a company was, right? Like
yeah,
size kitna hai, how big are you? And it almost always meant like how many people do you have headcount wise?
yeah,
And it was considered a respectful thing, like if it was more people than less, right? If you were
true.
too small, it was like, come on, like why even like
Yeah, it
please.
wasn't appreciated enough.
That
Yes.
wasn't appreciated, right? Why am I talking to you for a 90 people team and you should be a 500 people company?
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
it's changed. I
yeah,
actually fully feel like it's changed, and we are valuing as a society very different things,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Small teams are no longer a weakness. It's actually can be a strength. Big teams can also be a strength. But the team size thing is no longer become a filter for can I do business with you or not, right?
yeah,
And what that goes to say is, even whether it's small or big, the expectation per person on quality has actually gone up a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. Absolutely true. I think you're very true in saying that, nowadays you do come across companies which have intentionally kept their team size to a smaller number, right? When I was even saying 20 to 40 to 30, 50, which is very small compared to what a typical organization looks like. And that's their intention to be there. They don't want to go beyond 100, or, so on and so forth. And I think that works really well, especially in a, we talk about sustainability and, like, so it's not just about getting more and more, and, so there are brands I know, who are very climate conscious. They want to willingly keep their business small. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's not about how much stuff can, people buy, right? Because then the whole purpose is defeated, right? So I do see very innovative, exceptional companies now leveraging tools, like for example, even Gen AI, right? Like you're leveraging so many tools to intentionally keep the size small. At the same time, we have other examples, right? Like even outside climate, if you see, for example, if you see Netflix team, engineering team, it's such a small team. I mean, nobody would imagine like a global product which is doing so well as Netflix. I mean, they'll have a such a small team, engineering team, right? So
Have you
there.
read the book by Reed Hastings on how he built Netflix and the team?
I don't know. I haven't read the book, but I've been like,
I'm going to send it to you. It's called No Rules Rules, and it's
yeah,
exceptional about team building. I'll
yeah,
ship it to you.
that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, and there are examples. And in fact, my previous organization, Gojek, when they they were actually known for the nine engineering member team when they started off, and they had already built a massive platform, right? So it was a very it was a very renowned tool platform even at that time. So there have been examples of how exceptional products can be built with very small teams, and we see a lot of examples in the climate space even more now.
Like,
I mean, most of the organizations, if you see in climate, because I think, okay, so I read a stat which says about 85% of climate tech startups, they have not crossed the series, right? Like, which
yeah,
in itself shows currently we are still at a nascent stage, right?
Very early.
But very, very early. And 85% is a huge number even if you take like a 3,000 startups, right? So, and all those teams, at least majority of the teams that we have worked in, they have not crossed the 50 number, even the 40 number for that matter, right? So they're all like 20 to 30, 30 to 40 size teams. So yes, absolutely. I think we are quite early in the game. And some companies have an intentional notion of actually keeping it small and growing it that way, right? So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, yes. Now going into the three phases, 0 to 1,
Yeah.
1 to 10, and 10 to 100, what changes
Yeah.
in the team construction and the type of people you look for?
Yeah.
Um, Talk about that evolution.
Yeah. I think I can talk from my experience of building that, 0 to 100 and then being part of bigger organizations, right? I think at 0 to 100, we are looking for, missionaries, right? Like people who are aligned. I mean, that's one of the key criteria is that people who are very aligned with what you're building in the first place, right? Like they have to be sold when they talk about this is the product I'm building, and they have to be convinced that this does something good or like so that journey of aligning values, it becomes very critical at your early stages. um, and that's a big differentiator between that that stage versus a company which is scaling now, like from 100 to 500x for that matter, right? Then you start looking for these specialized people, right? Like you start off with getting more generalists on board who are aligned with your mission, people who can play on multiple hats when they are doing a role. They are working closely with the founding team, and their roles are not specialized in that sense, right? It carries on actually till 100. The roles are not too specialized. Everybody knows what's happening. Everybody's roles are very aligned, cross functional in that matter. But the moment you scale, you start looking for expertise, right? Like one is heading your finances, heading your, your CEO comes in, and much bigger leaders comes in, and they're like a lot more managers in place, right? So I think I think the differentiator remains that for sure, generalist versus specialized. And yes, people I mean, it's still good if people are aligned with your values, but that doesn't become the criteria to sort of select or reject people, right? After 100, you still want people, they feel good about working for what you're doing. But it's not always a criteria when, a recruiter or a hiring manager is interviewing people that how much passionate are you about what we are solving for, right? So I would say these two have been the biggest differentiator at these two levels for sure. Yeah. How about you? What's your experience shown you? Now that
We're still,
to
we're
one
still
phase.
0 to 1 with
Yeah,
some 1 to 10. But
absolutely.
no,
But
we've gone through quite a journey ourselves, right? You know the entire Climes and Climes equilibrium and how
yeah,
Climes
yeah, exactly.
journey. So I think we've had about 50 or 55 people come through the door of Climes at some point or the other. And we've gotten very lucky by and large with a lot of great people.
Yeah,
Uh, Really like similar mindset, resilient. Um, and you're right, like visionaries in some sense, right? Like more purpose driven, vision driven, and then certain business lines of what we've built
yeah,
have needed like deep sectoral expertise. So
yeah,
once we figure out what to build, then you need an expert to actually come and build it, right?
exactly.
And
Yeah,
I think going forward from here, that
yeah,
is what's going to happen too. It's going to be more experts with a broad-based profile, but sectoral depth is really what we're hiring for. I don't think we're hiring for like generalists anymore.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess that journey can differ from 1 to 50, 50 to 100, depending on what's scale and what pace are you going in that sense. But yeah,
Yeah, and I
absolutely.
don't even think it's ever like 1 to 10, 10 to 100. It's like 1 to 10, 10 back to 5, 5 to 15, 15 back to 12. And then
Yeah, yeah. That will always be the case, right? Like there'll be the whole retention, the attrition that always be there.
Yes, 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 for
Even
sure.
and that happens, right? Like at the initial stages, if people are not aligned after working for like 6 months or 12 months, and they might not stick around, and that's okay. It's not always considered as like, oh my god, your attrition is so high, and that's actually okay because you need people who stick around with you for what you're building. Right. So that's not the right indicator if we think of like, oh, things are not sticking around for,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Great. So I have a question about, the role of climate hires in all of this, which is inevitably the question comes in every company's mind, every founder's mind. Should I just do this myself? Should I have an HR person on my team doing this? Or should I have an external partner like a climate hires? Go
Yeah.
and find the next best person for my team, right?
Right.
Those are typically the three options.
Yeah.
How have you seen that play out? And what is climate hires' role been in that puzzle? And how have you actually added significant value? Because I know you work with so many companies.
Yeah.
So what is it that what is it you're solving that founders and teams themselves can't do?
Hmm. Very interesting. Um, I think founders are the best recruiters, like hands down, right? Like I will, no matter how great a work we do, the way a founder will sell their vision, nobody will do, right? But when you're building as a founder, there are a lot of things that you're doing, right? And it's all about how you are prioritizing your time. And also, being a recruiter also means that you're not just like, connect passing on the knowledge of, hey, this is what I'm building and you should be part of it. But you're also hunting for people who may not even be looking out for you, right? And that's the outbound hiring or passive hiring, what we call, right? And that's where we come in the picture, or somebody like ClimateHires, right? We not only work on what you say like, hey, this is what I want, but we actually understand the position so well. If not as good as what a founder would sell, at least -1, right? Like that's how time and effort goes into understanding what you're building as an organization. What are your future goals, and why is it important what you're solving for, right? And I think being in climate already has an advantage because you're building something like really good for the planet and good for everybody, right? So that automatically has an advantage to it. So I've never heard till now when we approached people that, oh, like I'm not interested in something like this. The first response is, oh, this sounds really cool, or this sounds really interesting. How, what can I do about it, right? So we are reaching out to people who don't even know what climate jobs are yet. And that's a because at the end of the day, you need exceptional talent, right? And exceptional talent can be very comfortably sitting in any job, right? So we are telling them, hey, this is what this company is building, and this is why it's important. And I feel what you've done in the past or what you're doing currently, it's perfectly aligned with in some ways, and you should explore. So we are letting people explore these conversations, right? And it may not even lead to always hiring, but we are keeping our eye out on a much wider level of talent which is out there and doing the mapping for you so that the founder or the team they can continue doing what they are really good at, and when you're small you don't have like these big recruiting teams who are doing it, right? So that's why majority of our clients are companies which are in early stages when it comes to startups, right? So we closely work with them, understand it so well, and do the positioning for you. But like I said, like the way a founder can sell, that's always remains the best bet, right? And what we tell them, hey, this is, of course you do it great, but we'll find the people and then you do the selling part, right? Like we get them excited. Our job is to get people excited and to create that awareness around these careers, and then get to the founders. And that's what we have received the feedback so far, that we are able to understand the context. Like, for example, if you tell me that you're in the companies in the climate finance space, so we come with an understanding of what a climate finance company does, right? So you don't have to put in extra effort in what you would mean by these terms. But there's so many jargons in climate, right? So we come with that understanding. We do our own research and homework of what this encompasses, and that's very critical when you're reaching out to people.
Yeah, like you said, 85% companies are pre-Series B stage, still
Yeah,
in this space, right, in
yeah,
climate. And that means that the mostly smaller, earlier stage companies that haven't got that level of visibility and that level of mass market appeal and branding,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you're right, like time is constrained. So there's so much going on, so much to like keep doing. How much time can people actually spend building companies and creating this large surface area for discovery? And I
exactly.
really feel like your value add has been that, which is you're expanding the surface area of discovery for companies,
Yeah,
with people who may not have even known about it earlier.
absolutely. And that remains our primary goal, right? To get more and more people aware of these jobs. I mean, still people, like I said, I thought climate job is like, planting trees and cleaning, restoring lakes. And still people have that thought process. So in everyday conversations, we are trying to change that, and we are trying to make people aware of what actually, how can you add more value and get people more excited. Because also, given my experience, I've extensively worked with tech companies and startups and, so on, so forth. And that talent, the background of these talent can be very valuable in this. And so people like from different organizations have come and told me like, oh, I didn't even know there's something called like climate tech, like can you tell me more about it, right? So it's reaching out to this vast, like, majority of these audience which has no clue about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And every job can be a climate job. Like you said
Yeah,
too, whether you're a designer, you're a finance person, even a compliance person can have a climate job. If you're
exactly.
working towards furthering a climate goal and your job enables that, it's a climate job.
It is.
So that's why
Exactly.
it's so all-encompassing, right? Design, marketing, product building, engineering, right? Finance, all of them are finance jobs.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
not any one skill. And still people say like, hey, do I need to do a certification in ESG? They may be from like marketing or finance, but everybody thinks like, oh, they need to do a certification. They need to constantly upskill themselves. That's actually not has been my observation, right? Like you don't, not everybody needs to be an ESG or a sustainability expert. So, like you said, whether it's design or marketing or branding or finance, everybody has a role to play, because climate organizations, at the end of the day, are organizations like any other, right? Like you need all kind of skills to build all the different functions. So,
Yeah. I actually feel like it's quite permissionless, especially now in 2025. Maybe it was different 10 years ago, but it's
yeah,
very permissionless, with the exception of a few areas. Like if you're working on nuclear fusion, I
yeah,
really hope you've got a PhD
of
in nuclear
course,
engineering,
yeah,
right? But in most other things, you don't really need to have that level of educational expertise anymore, because a lot of it is learning on the job. A lot of it is where your curiosity takes you. Like, are you a phenomenal brander, marketer? Are you a phenomenal designer? Are you a phenomenal just engineer, right? Like, these are skills rather than any certifications or expertise
yeah,
that then get applied towards water, waste, carbon, energy,
yeah. And that's
right?
even technical organ, like you said about
Yeah,
whether it's a nuclear or a green hydrogen or like any technical, product you see, even they require people across functions, right? A green
yeah.
hydrogen company will still need a marketer, will still need a finance person or a compliance manager. So that's why climate jobs are across so many, at the intersection of so many industries and corporates and startups everywhere. We see these arising.
What is your estimate of the number of climate jobs in the country right now? And by the end of this decade, what do you imagine it will be?
Well, I've been doing my own research on these numbers, and it varies a lot. But roughly, we see around like 35 million jobs going to come up by 2030, 2032, right? Like, and it also varies. Like some reports always say like, they're going to be like 40 million or 50 million, right? So the anywhere from 35 to 50 million by 2035, we have seen like a projection. And that's across, all the sectors within the climate or even outside climate, right? Like we talked about how these jobs are not limited to climate sectors, but it's coming in the traditional manufacturing companies and so on and so forth. So there is a huge rise that is expected by 2030, and it's already reached, I would say, like roughly 15 to 16 million is what I was looking at the numbers that already
Wow.
exist, right? So yeah, it there is massive demand gonna come up in this space. Yeah.
How many have you enabled since the birth of ClimateHires in 2023 so far? And by the end of the decade, what do you hope it will be?
Wow, that's like a huge projection by 5 years. But as of now, I can say, like, even the journey is early for us. I mean, we started in late 2023, which roughly just over a year. We have directly enabled about 40 plus people already get hired, right? But we have had, so that's not the only thing we do, right? We have one-on-one conversations with over like 400 people almost, right? Like we have been tracking the one-on-one conversations we are having, every now and then, just to create awareness of, what the landscape looks like when it comes to climate jobs. right? So there are hundreds of those conversations happening on everyday basis. So, and we have been able to reach through our channel more than 2,000 people, from the ClimateHires channel, people who have been registering with us, and hearing from us about different jobs that they can, that we are hiring for, or we are just like observing in the industry. So yes, while it's small, I would say as of now, but I think that number is constantly going up by every passing day. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I know lots of companies in the same space where the founders actually look forward to working with you, uh, because you do have that secret sauce. Being like you don't need an in-house HR team. It's not even HR. It's like you're kind of like you're doing a founder level recruitment effort for companies, and I've seen that play out a couple of times too.
Thank
It's
you.
pretty
Yeah,
cool.
that's yeah. I've been very fortunate to work with multiple founders, including you. And learning from the best, and like helping people continue to do what they are amazing at, and
Yeah.
there's so much on their plate already. So I'm like, hey, this is what I can help with. This is like one part of what you probably be doing or focusing as a company. But I think it's super crucial, and if I can use my expertise and my team's expertise to do that for you, like,
What is your one big hope for the future? I mean, you're already in the space.
yeah,
You transition into the space. You're building a company in the space. You're helping others get into the space. You're helping founders find the right people to build companies with, right? You're a cross-pollinator.
yeah,
What is your one big hope? Let's say in the next 5 years. What would you be proud of having achieved?
right. See, I feel right now, based on so many conversations, I feel like there's a lot of suspense around climate careers, right? Like
Hmm.
everyday conversation is all about how how what all is possible in climate jobs, right? And how can you do that for yourself, no matter what background you come from. So I really wish that suspense around these jobs to go away, and for it to become so mainstream, right? Like I want climate careers to be a mainstream job option for people in the coming decade, and I think that's going to be transformational, and I think that's absolutely needed, right? We need millions of people to be working in this sector, and the job can be as exciting and as rewarding as any other space. So yeah.
That's beautiful. I actually align with you on that a lot. I think our entire Climes team would align with you on that a lot because our thinking is climate is not mainstream.
Hmm.
Climate
Hmm.
action needs to actually become mainstream, like super easily accessible, super economical, fun to do.
Yeah.
And the more climate action becomes like bite-sized and mainstream, the more those discovery points will happen for, oh, this is also possible. Like I can do this. Oh, I can work in this space. Oh,
Yeah.
like I didn't know that was a problem. I can actually like think about more, right? The
Yeah.
climate layer needs to become more mainstream in itself.
Absolutely. And I think it's so beautiful to even think of, right? Like imagine like everybody having that purposeful job, right? The organization that you're working for is doing something great for the planet and for the community. And that's a different kind of motivation and satisfaction you can derive out of a job, right? So if most jobs become like this, I think it's amazing for even careers to be more meaningful. And yeah, that's the hope for the
Yeah. I've seen some version of that Ikigai, a
yes.
Japanese Ikigai concept, right? This is it. This
This
really
is
is it.
yeah,
The
yeah,
world needs it. You can have passion around it. You can be good at it, and hopefully you can make some money also in it, right?
yeah.
The
I
intersection of all of that.
I'm hopeful of that as well. Right now, I know we do have the constraint of financial growth. People say that, oh, is there enough money? And that's a conversation in itself we can spend hours on. But I think the way things are evolving and the way companies are growing in this space. I mean, we have already seen so many IPOs in the renewable companies happening, right? Like, and that's a very promising start. Like how when these, like for example, solar became so mainstream, now it's become mainstream after so many support around policies and uh, regulations, and similar trends will be followed for other sectors. So I think it's really great to see that people can finally think that, hey, it's not just meaningful, but it's also good for their own careers and in all in growth in all terms, not just like career growth, but financial growth as well. So yeah, we do see that trend coming up, and I hope people find their ikigai in climate jobs.
Yes. What a great line to end on. Asta, it's been a true pleasure. having you with us on the Voice of Generation Climate today. You are true Gen Z yourself,
Thank you.
enabling a lot more Gen Z to come into the space.
Thank you so much, and thank you for doing this. You have been talking to some exceptional people. I've been hearing your podcast, and it's so good to see a platform that is enabling those conversation and voices out. So, thank you for your work.
Those conversations with people who are also building in the same space, and we like to
Even
get that
better.
conversation.
Like that's even better. I feel like you have a company to run, and in despite of that, you are choosing to do this. That's a true Gen Z attribute, I would say.
Great. Thank you, Asta. Appreciate you for your time.
Thanks a lot.